raised to give 100% of her effort to every endeavor. Since her earliest experiences in Girl Scouts, numerous volunteer events and organizations, she has always sought to make a difference. After graduating college, she served our country with 23 years of dedicated and distinguished naval service. Dedicated to self-improvement, she obtained graduate degrees in Asian Studies, conflict resolution, cybersecurity policy, and emergency management while on active duty. As a working parent of 2, she became aware of just how much of a gap existed in emergency preparedness training and resources for childcare providers, and vowed to use her experiences and education, and most importantly, motivation, to help improve those limitations. Her desire to bridge the emergency management and childcare communities culminated in the founding of the nonprofit Blocks, with a mission of helping childcare for disaster preparedness. Heather?
Good morning. 2011 American Community Census data indicates that over 61% of children 5 and under spend an average of 33 hours a week in childcare arrangements. A variety of disasters impact the U.S. at any given time. Let me give you just a couple of statistics to think about from the perspective of what could impact a childcare. Tornadoes, 3,365 occurred in the U.S. Earthquakes, 3,365 occurred in the U.S. in 2012. Tornadoes, we average 1,000 tornadoes a year. Supercell tornadoes, most likely to hit between 3 p.m. and 9 p.m. Childcare is a fascinating industry that does 3 very important things. 1, it generates almost $50 billion a year in revenue and helps the economy through the provision of jobs. 2, it enables parents to work. And 3, it provides social value through the molding of our little ones. At the same time, lack of childcare costs U.S. businesses $3 billion a year. So why am I telling you this? Well, despite its obvious importance and value to society, the economy, and of course to parents, there are no national childcare preparedness requirements. Childcare is not prepared for disaster. It is not prepared to recover from disaster. Childcare is not an alternate 9 to 5 location for our children. Oftentimes, it's a 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. one. You look at me like I'm nuts, but I can tell you as prior active duty military, those times are needed and used. In 2008, Save the Children evaluated childcare preparedness across 3 criteria: having an evacuation plan, having a plan for reunification with families, and having a plan for children with disabilities or functional access needs. In 2008, 4 states met that criteria. The 2010 National Commission on Children in Disaster highlighted the need for childcare preparedness standards for disaster planning, training, and exercises. The Child Care Development and Block Grant Act in 2014 took some of the recommendations from the Commission, and it mandated that child care have some sort of disaster preparedness and response plan for man-made and natural disasters, and that state preparedness plans take in consideration the needs of children in child care and be prepared to collaborate with child care organizations in the event of a disaster. 2015 Save the Children's annual report indicated that 33 states now met that criteria of having an evacuation plan, a plan for reunification with families, and a plan for children with functional access needs or disabilities. Sounds great, right? Let's look again. Having a plan and meeting a standard is not the same as being prepared. A lot of things look good on paper. Childcare itself operates on a very thin profit margin. Money is spent to meet state requirements. They're going to fund the have-tos before the would-like-tos, and disaster preparedness, unfortunately, usually falls into that latter category. Emergency managers don't generally operate in an emergency operations setting with childcare experts. Each state has a different agency that accredits or regulates childcare, e.g. Department of Education, Department of Health and Human Services, Department of Family Services, etc. So you'll have somebody from that agency in your emergency operations center if it's activated, but not necessarily somebody from the division or department that deals with childcare. And I can tell you the needs of the K through 12 children and their educators are different than the needs of preschoolers and infants. The children themselves are not prepared for disaster. Childcare curriculum content is essentially not mandated. Although the children learn a lot of valuable social and educative lessons, again, disaster preparedness is not necessarily one of them. At home, Daniel Tiger, introduced through Mr. Rogers' Won't You Be My Neighbor program that I grew up with. I'm sorry about that. It teaches my children things about sharing, not being scared. Even if you have to go potty, stop and go right away. Or stop and listen to stay safe. Not surprisingly, a lot of us find these lessons very useful because it speaks to the kids in their own language, and the lyrics impossible to forget, even though as adults try. My daughter taught me what she had learned in her childcare about calling 911 and what they do in a fire drill. So there is a small layer of preparedness that we can build from, but the lack of a requirement to prepare our children for disaster is a missed opportunity to build a generation of kids who see disaster as something not overwhelming and scary, but as something they might be able to control or manage a little. If any of you out there are parents and you have preschoolers, you know how important it is that they get a say and they get to decide. I keep thinking back to the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami and the reports of that little British schoolgirl and her memory of a geography lesson about earthquakes and coastal areas and what that receding water meant. She saved lives. Just imagine what our kids could do if they started learning about preparedness at 2. Being prepared for the disaster means being prepared not just for the event, but to recover. Child care recovery is not easy. Unless the child care is publicly funded or eligible to receive FEMA recovery support based on its designation as an essential service, and very few are, it's limited in its ability to recover based on cash reserves, insurance, and any small business association loans that it can qualify for. Ultimately, the better prepared a child care is to deal with and recover from disaster, the better a community is going to respond. I have 2 takeaways for you. First, child care is a highly vulnerable population. Child care is an industry that's highly vulnerable during a disaster, both based on its population and its degree of disaster and disaster recovery planning. One of those 2 factors can be mitigated. I'll let you guess which one. And 2, child care recovery is important. If parents don't go back to work, the community does not recover. After housing, lack of child care is the 2nd largest impediment to child care recovery. As emergency managers, we need to understand the limitations and the realities of child care planning and work with them to help enable not just child care, but community recovery. Thank you.